Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Rush and I wanted to work through a couple of the questions on the for loop worksheet with you, and I'm going to be using a technique called tracing. Tracing is a very effective technique for tracing through a loop and is definitely something that you're going to want to utilize on the AP exam. So the first question here is, what is output by the code below? We have a for loop. We have an initialization of I set to 0. Our condition is I less than or equal to 10, and our increment is going to be I plus 2. Our statement for this question is system.out.print. So as long as the condition is true, we will go ahead and print I. So I'm going to get set up for my tracing. The first thing I want to do is I want to draw a T-chart. So if you're following along with me, go ahead and draw your T-chart. On the T-chart, I want to look at my for loop and figure out what are the things that I'm going to need to keep track of, the things that are going to change within my loop. Well, I can see on my condition and my increment that I is going to continue to change as I iterate through each loop. So I'm definitely going to have to keep track of I. So I'm going to label one side of my T-chart I. The other thing that's going to change is my print, because my print is going to keep printing out as long as my condition is true. So I want to keep track of my print. And my print is indeed a print and not a print line, so that means I'm going to be printing horizontally and not vertically. All right, on my T-chart, I need to figure out what is the value of I before I even go start looping, and I has been initialized to 0, so I'm going to put a 0 under I. So now I can go over to my condition. It says I less than or equal to 10. Well, I is 0. Is 0 less than or equal to 10? That is true. Because that's true, I'm going to come down to my statement. My statement says to system.out.print I. I is 0, so I'm going to print 0. And then I'm going to increment I. I'm incrementing I by 2. So 0 plus 2 is 2. I update I to 2. Come back to my condition, test my condition again. Is 2 less than or equal to 10? The answer is true, so I'm going to come down to my statement and I'm going to print I. I is 2. The 2 goes side by side to the 0. Come up to my increment. I'm going to increment I by 2. I becomes 4. Back to my condition. Is 4 less than or equal to 10? The answer to that is true. So I'm going to come down to my statement. I'm going to print I. I has a current value of 4. So I'll print 4, increment 2. 2 goes to 6. Is 6 less than or equal to 10? The answer to that is true. So I will print I. I is 6, so I'm going to add a 6, and I'm going to increment I to 8. Is 8 less than or equal to 2? Less than or equal to 10? The answer is true. So I'm going to print I, which is 8, and then I will increment I to 10. Is 10 less than or equal to 10? The answer to that is true. So I will print I. I is 10, and then I will increment I by 2. I becomes 12. Is 12 less than or equal to 10? The answer is false. So that means I am done. I am out of my loop, and my answer is right here, 0246810. Let's try another one. So I think this is question number 7 on your worksheet. What is output by the code below? I have declared and initialized a variable called ands, and it's been assigned the value of 0. My for loop is I have initialization of I equals 0. Condition is I less than 20. My statement is, as long as my condition is true, is if I modulus 2 is 0, then I'm going to add I and ands together. If it's false, I don't add anything together, and then I come back up. I increment I, and I go test my condition again. So let's go ahead and draw our T-chart. What are we going to have to keep track of? Well, we're going to have to keep track of I, because I is what is going to keep incrementing. So I, and I'm also going to have to keep track of ands, because if the if statement is true, then ands and I are going to be added together and assigned back to ands. All right, so initially my value to I is 0, and my value to ands is 0 because it says so right there. All right, so I'm ready to go into my for loop. I'm going to test my condition. I less than 20. Well, I is 0. 0 is indeed less than 20, so I'm going to come down to my if, and I'm going to test to see if my if is true. So if I modulus 2 is equal to 0. Well, 0 divided by 2, remainder, is indeed going to give me 0. Okay, let me just show that to you. So I've got 0 divided by 2. So 2 goes into 0 times. My remainder is 0. 0 does in fact equal to 0. So I'll come down into my statement. I'm going to add ands and 1 together. Well, ands right now is 0. I is 0, so I'm going to add them together, update ands. So ands becomes 0. And then I'm going to increase I by 3. So 0 plus 3 is 3. I'm going to come back up and I'm going to test my condition. So I has a value of 3. 3 is indeed less than 20. That is true. So I'll come back into my if. And my if reads 3 modulus 2 equal to 0. Well, that's going to be false because 3 divided by 2 remainder is going to give me a remainder of 1. And here's a hint. Because we're dividing by 2, that if I is odd, my if is false. And I'll do nothing with my statement. If I is an even number, then it is indeed going to give me a remainder of 0, and I will update ands. Because I is false, I don't do anything with ands. I'm going to carry down my value of ands, which was 0, and I'll update I by adding 3, because that's my increment. I becomes 6. Let's go back up to our for loop. Test our condition. Is 6 less than 20? The answer is true, so I'll come to my if. If 6 modulus 2, is that equal to 0? Well, it's an even number, so yes, if you did the math, you would get a remainder of 0. That is true. So therefore, I will take ands and I will add them together. Ands is a value of 0, I has a value of 6, so I'll update ands becomes 6. Update I by adding 3 to it, I becomes 9. Come back up to my for loop, test my condition. Is 9 less than 20? The answer to that is true. So I'll come into my if. I've got 9 modulus 2. Well, that's going to give me a remainder of 1, so that's going to be false. So I'm not going to do anything with ands except carry down the 6. And I'm going to update I by adding 3 to it. I goes to 12. So back up to my for loop, test my condition. Is 12 less than 20? The answer to that is true. Come into my if. I've got 12 divided by 2. That will give me a remainder of 0. 0 does equal 0, so I will update ands by adding ands and I together. 6 plus 12 is 18. Update ands with 18. Add 3 to I becomes 15. Let's back up to our for loop, test our condition. Is 15 less than 20? The answer to that is indeed true, so we'll come into our if. 15 modulus 2 is going to return 1, so I get a false there. I don't do anything with ands except just bring down my 18. And then update I. 15 plus 3 is 18. So back up to my for loop, test my condition again. 18 less than 20, the answer to that is true. Go to my if. 18 modulus 2 is indeed going to return 0, so I get a true there, and I'm going to take ands and add that to I, so I've got 18 for ands, 18 for I, add them together, I get 36 for update my ands, and then add 3 to I. 18 plus 3 is 21. So come back up into my for loop, test my condition. I is 21. Is 21 less than 20? The answer to that is false. I am done at this point. I can print ands. Ands has a value of 36. So that is 2 examples of doing your for loop. You can go ahead and do all 10 questions of your for loop. And again, practice your tracing. It's definitely a technique that you need to master.